Hello?
Hi, Hayden. How are you?
Good.
This week's episode is looking at how the United States seems to have taken a special liking to deporting people recently,
Yeah.
like people who are here legally. And I'm just wondering what you make of that.
Well, I don't think it's good. Dave, I don't know how I don't know much about international law, but when you deport people that are legally in your country, is that still deporting them, or is that just kind of like abducting them and putting them on a plane?
I think abducting is a good word actually for this.
I saw a video and it was like ICE agents arresting some activist on her way home because she had said something about maybe not committing genocide or something in Palestine, and it was just like people in hoodies coming up to her and just loading her into a van. And you'd have to say that if that was happening in some developing nation in Eastern Europe or Africa or South America or something, America would be like all over it, being this is barbarous dictatorship. But when it happens at home, it's more like kind of sort of sparkling authoritarianism. You know, it's not the real deal because it's happening here and it couldn't possibly happen here.
Yeah, there was that male activist that got caught in like the lobby of his building, and it was kind of amazing how everyone's dressed down, they are in hoodies, and like they won't talk. It is like a kidnapping. Yeah, it's kidnapping.
When you're like abducting people into a van and you're wearing a dark hoodie to do it, and you're like sneaking into their apartment building, do you ever sort of start to think, hey, is this a bit fucked, guys? We seem to be just like we've like gotten in disguises and we're just abducting this dude. Is that what the goodies do?
Do you ever get worried that your poor friend David might get deported from the United States?
Well, for me, that's a pretty exciting prospect because I just feel like we haven't hung out in a while and it'd be cool to have you back.
That's one of the nicest things you've ever said to me.
Yeah, I just need someone to babysit. Honestly, I'm dying here, and the other thing that I'd say is, you know, there's genuine oppression happening of people across the United States, but I have to congratulate you that you have found a way to make it about yourself.
It's what every white person's always trying to do. It's what we strive for.
Yeah. This seems bad, and the reason it's bad is because maybe it could happen to me, the main character.
I'm David Farrier, a New Zealander accidentally marooned in America, and I want to figure out what makes this country tick. And as Hayden indicated, yes, I have been thinking a lot about me recently and how I fit here in the land of the free, because over the last month, things have been feeling increasingly less free. That's because there's been a growing number of examples of people being held by ICE and deported from the country. And to be more specific, people who are here in the US legally, the right visa, the right green card, the right papers. The current administration seems to be making examples out of those who they've deemed to have spoken out in a way not appropriate for someone in America to speak. I've been watching, like many of us have, fascinated and a bit horrified by all of it. And sure, what Hayden said is completely right. I've been selfishly thinking about me, the main character in my own life. I'm here on a 3-year work visa that's coming up to being renewed. Here is someone who's tweeted and written a lot of shit about this country and its supreme leader, Donald Trump. It seemed like a time to take a break from regular programming and take a little look at what the heck is going on. So, prepare to delete your social media account before you hit customs, and keep an eye out for large men in hoodies about to load you into the back of a van, because this is the deportation episode.
Flightless, flightless, flightless bird touchdown in America. I'm a flightless bird touchdown in America.
Rob, how are you?
I'm good.
Another week in the beautiful US of A.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been strange.
So what, a peek behind the curtain, we had a conversation of if we could even have this conversation on the podcast.
Yeah, which I appreciate. I because we're kind of like always taking each other as like various ideas come into our brains. And I think I messaged you at some point, maybe 5 days ago. So we're recording this on Friday, March 28th.
Before the Tuesday it releases. So it's a very timely one, more timely than...
Yeah, so relatively close to release, but also a lot of, because this is America, I always feel like if we're talking about something timely to say the date, because like, if you're going, why aren't they mentioning that thing that happened yesterday?
Yeah, I'm sure by Monday there's going to be 3 more of these stories.
There's going to be, yeah, exactly. But no, I texted you being like, this deportation thing is pretty wild what we're seeing. And we've both been watching footage of, people being taken from their lobby of their apartment building or from the street saying, should we do an episode? And you replied back saying, essentially like, are you sure you want to do that,
well,
right?
You're here on a work visa, and these people that are being detained and kicked out, they're seemingly being kicked out for not any less than what you do. And my question was, are you sure you want to risk, which I think that's what this show does, but also there is the reality of what the scary shit that's going on right now.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, it's like part of the show, like we have a lot of discussions behind the scenes about what we want the show to be and what it looks like. And there's an element as well as like, this is kind of, this show, I don't see the show as being, I don't know, in your brain, I see the show mainly as being entertainment. Like I have a journalism part of my brain and I have sort of entertainment. I see it more being entertainment. But I think when we do cross over into topics that are more of the moment and have elements of journalism in there, we do have to have these discussions about what is practical. Because for the sake of the show, if this whole episode is going to be about the fact I have said negative things about the administration, the fact that I've talked about genocide in Gaza, and I'm just highlighting that out even further. And we're here to make a show. Your job is to produce the show and make the show work. So these discussions are kind of important.
Well, and obviously those things are more important to talk about, which 100%. Is ultimately why we're doing this and why we do episodes like this. But like it's getting scarier and scarier, it seems, in this country. And it seems like we're wading into water that we're not used to, or at least I'm not used to, of like this distrust in what's happening.
I started to get alarmed when I saw, in my mind, student protests have just always been a thing that you can do. Like since the Vietnam War, it's like students are there and universities are there to protest, and seeing these students being, literally put into the back of a van and their partners and friends filming saying, where are you taking them? And there being no answers. It is super scary. And it's, we're meant to be in a, we hear a lot about some of the most influential people in America talking about free speech a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's like, okay, what's happening here?
That's the thing that seems just so outwardly absurd about all of this is like, if you look at this from political stances on free speech, like the right, that's been such a talking point of like, that's what they're bringing back to Twitter and pushing for, of like, people should be able to have this free speech. Do they have justification that they're claiming for this, or it's just we're pretending that this isn't happening and they're not addressing it?
Most of it, from what I can tell, and I've got some articles I'm going to read from that have been reported, but they're not going into the inner depths of it. The thing that seems to be, certainly with the university protests, the thing that seems to be alluded to is that these protesters are in some way directly connected or enhancing the role of Hamas in all of this, right? So it's like, if you're basically the stance that if you are protesting and you're on the side of the Palestinians, you are part of a terrorist organization. That's kind of the confluence there. But no, there's nothing, to be clear, these people are being arrested because they said something the administration didn't like.
Yeah,
and I think they're being made they had an opinion.
An opinion that they were vocal about.
Yeah, and they're being made examples of. We're here talking about it. I think there'll be certain people that are being less vocal now about these things because they have families to support and they don't want to be loaded into the back of an ICE van.
Well, that's the scary thing, is the longer game for this is to silence people
100%.
and stop them from being vocal about it. What is the plan that they're trying to suppress?
And how far does it go? Like, it's like a slippery slope thing, right? I mean, you've been in America a lot longer than me. Have you been in this country when you've observed things like this happening before?
No, I mean,
I'm not missing something.
No, I haven't, but this country feels like a much different place right now.
Since Trump won again, there's been a lot of debate about because he made such a loud song and dance about deporting illegal immigrants, etc. And I know there's been a lot of debate, like the Biden administration also deported a hell of a lot of people, but they were just like less vocal about it, right?
Yeah.
And so I look at Trump doing it and being so vocal about it, it's kind of abhorrent and disgusting. But what the shift seems to be that's so interesting is we're now having people who are here, according to the eyes of the government, legally on all the right visas. They've done nothing wrong except for speak about an issue, a huge issue. I'm always worried about how I say the word issue because people keep telling me I say issue. That's the weird shift for me in all of this. And that feels, as someone here who writes a lot on Webworm about being about the genocide and how I'm very anti-genocide, the fact I'm loud about it on all social media, I'm now thinking of that a lot when I come through customs coming in and out of the United States in a way that I never thought of before.
Yeah. I mean, and like the fact that they're targeting these college kids who are like the brightest that this country has, these like people that came here to be educated in our college system.
Yeah, and to make America better. Like to make America brainier.
Which your motto is make America great.
Yeah.
And like you're sending people away that...
Yeah. I assume that people that are very like pro what is happening right now, they're just going to assume, these people are somehow linked to a terrorist group or something,
right? Is that though? That's what I'm confused about.
Well, to be clear, I'm also confused.
I don't understand the argument for it.
No, and I think that's why they're taking legal action against the Trump administration over this because it's not legal.
Because there was like that French scientist that like they wouldn't let come in because he had stuff on his social media criticizing the administration. This is the party that preaches like free speech, don't take my guns, like all of this. But then because of a comment, I don't know what the comment was.
I do wonder about the way people are viewing, because I think something that's so remarkable, this is slightly off topic, but these group signal text thread, right? Yeah. About, this upcoming attack in Yemen. A journalist from The Atlantic got added to that text chain accidentally, and 2 hours before this attack took place in Yemen, he was sent all the, coordinates and timings and everything. It was classified information at the time.
Which is exactly what they tried to crucify Hillary over.
Yeah. Endlessly. Yeah. Endlessly. So that happens. The Atlantic writes the piece. They keep the attack plans out of it because they're probably worried about publishing them and what that means. Yeah. They publish the fact that it was ridiculous. They were included in a very clearly private, sensitive thread. And there was a lot of talk of the emojis that various American leaders were sending. Flexed biceps and American flags when the attack was carried out. But then, the administration comes out and says, oh no, that's like, he's a liar. He's a liar. He's discredited. And then we've got the Atlantic the next day, so they come out and they publish all the attack plans.
Like, clearly we're not lying. Here's what we were sent.
I think a lot of America went, holy shit. And I just think a really interesting thing that's happened, there's been a few big podcasts, I guess, from like Manosphere land that are typically more aligned to Trump. And a number of those podcasts are actually calling this out this time and being like, no, this is like this is bad. And I haven't seen that happen in a while. Usually it seems to be like blind kind of, everything is fine, don't worry about it, the left is blowing it out of proportion. And I wonder with this stuff if there's going to be like, probably not, but like an element of like, this seems bad from people that would typically support the leader of the country.
Yeah, I think the fact that they now feel like they're being lied to, maybe it's just like that being the straw of like all the stories that we've heard these last 2-3 months, like the text chain mishap seems, it was clearly a big deal because of how sensitive it was, but like the abuse of power beyond that is like, that's not to me like, but it is weird how like those little things end up being the final
thing
straw
that suddenly catches on.
Yeah.
I feel like what was so powerful about that story is it was relatable to people. I feel like a lot of the bad shit that's going on, it's just people's lives are busy. I can't grasp the magnitude of what is going on and how important it is. Whereas with this, it's like, no, we've all been accidentally included in a thread or included someone else, and we can all relate to it. And we can say, holy shit, imagine if the smartest intelligence in the United States was doing that, and they did this, and they texted out attack plans.
Yeah.
You're like, oh no, you're like, this is clearly fucked.
Highly confidential
Yeah.
information.
I mean, the main thing, I'm not into planning missile strikes and drone attacks and that kind of thing, but I imagine the main thing you want to do is not let the enemy know, like, we're leaving now and we're coming here 2 hours in advance. Like, you don't want to be leaking that information. Stay tuned for more Flightless Bird. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Pesty. Now, I live in an apartment. It is bug-free for most of the year, but there is a certain time of the year when it gets a certain level of heat, the biggest cockroaches ever suddenly appear in one room.
They found a way in.
Because you walk on the sidewalk and they're out and about.
Yep.
But I don't know what the hell they're doing in the house and where they've come from and if they've been hiding all year. With Pesty's do-it-yourself pest control, you can protect your home easily at a quarter of the cost. And this is honestly not come at a better time for me because I could not deal with them last season. And I'm very glad I now have Pesty on my side. While other pest control companies charge over $800 per year, with Pesty, you can get started at just $35 per treatment with a customized plan based on your location, bugs, and climate.
Yeah, they sent us these Pesty kits, which comes with a sprayer, a mixing bag, pesticide, gloves, and instructions that you can put all together in less than 10 minutes.
I want it to be simple and effective, and I want to get rid of those cockroaches.
Pesty gets rid of over 100 types of bugs, from spiders to ants to roaches and scorpions, which scorpions...
if they start turning up...
sounds terrifying. I don't want any scorpions anywhere near me.
Pesty is also kid and pet friendly. The pesticides they ship are fully registered and have been used in hospitals and schools all over the country. And Pesty offers a 100% bug-free guarantee or your money back. If the bugs and the roaches don't go away, they'll give you a full refund. Protect your home from bugs with Pesty. Go to pesty.com/bird for an extra 10% off your first order. That's pestie.com/bird for an extra 10% off. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Spot and Tango. Now, Rob, you have a beautiful dog. I've met your dog. I've scratched your dog. I have tickled your dog's belly.
Huxley is my dog's name. It's a little Shih Tzu. And my wife really spoils Huxley and is very particular about the kind of food that she'll give her to eat.
I can tell because she's got a beautiful coat.
Yes, Shih Tzus are finicky, and the wrong diet will make them more annoying. When I told her we had Spot and Tango as a sponsor and we're going to send us some food, she was very happy.
While most kibble is packed with fillers and mystery ingredients, no one wants mystery ingredients. With Spot and Tango, they do things differently. Their unkibble meals are made with human-grade ingredients, including USDA meat, fruits, and veggies. There's no artificial stuff, no preservatives, and that's probably why Huxley likes the food so much. Lucky Huxley. Using their fresh dry process, fresh ingredients are gently cooked and freeze-dried to lock in nutrients, creating a shelf-stable, nutrient-rich meal that's as close to home-cooked as it gets. I think Huxley probably eats better than I eat. They create a custom plan based on your dog's age, breed, weight, and activity level, so you know they're getting exactly what they need. Plus, the easy-to-use scoop makes portioning simple.
Spot and Tango is offering an exclusive deal for our listeners. For a limited time, go to spotandtango.com/bird and use code BIRD to get 50% off your first order.
That's spotandtango.com/bird, code BIRD to get 50% off your first order. spotandtango.com/bird, code BIRD. So what I've done, I thought we could go through just quickly a couple of the examples that we've seen in the press of people getting thrown into a van.
Yep.
And then I spoke. Oh my God, you're fired. Get out. I spoke to a Canadian woman who was coming back into the United States. She'd been back and forth. She was reapplying for a visa.
She lived here?
Yeah, she lived in the States. And she found herself being bailed up and flown into a detention center for 2 weeks. And she's written about her experience. And I really wanted to talk to her about what that was like. Because I guess she's a bit like me. She's like a privileged white person who was just doing her thing and then suddenly found herself in pretty abhorrent conditions for 2 weeks. So I talked to her in a little bit. But just to clarify some of the stories that have sort of jumped out at me and I think got you and I talking a bit about this. Columbia University student, Mahmoud Khalil, I'm probably butchering the name completely, but he was leading a lot of those protests. And there's actually a documentary that's come out that he narrated about it that's out now. He was in the lobby of his apartment building and he got bailed up by plainclothes officers. His wife was filming and was incredibly distressed.
A pregnant wife?
Yeah, expecting their first child. And that was the first thing that kind of made me go, oh, holy shit, this seems crazy. This is a student who's leading these protests and this is happening to him.
And he just kind of disappeared, right?
Yeah, just gone. No word.
Didn't say where he was, what was happening.
And as we record today, he's still detained and he's had, I understand, like a first hearing, but he is still certainly not a free person. And yeah, sort of just wants to be home with his wife and who was expecting their first child. So that was kind of awful. And then footage that was going around a couple of days ago was a female who she was just on the street and you've seen the footage?
Yeah.
It's pretty distressing.
Yeah.
Cuffed, big men in hoodies. They put her into a van and drive off. And she had also spoken out. There was an article I thought the NBC News wrote that kind of summed it up. And the headline was just academic groups sue Trump administration for arresting students and faculty members linked to the pro-Palestine protests.
So it seems like they're largely targeting students. They're not going after NPR and plenty of organizations that are writing about this.
They seem particularly angry about
the people mobilizing, and is it because they're concerned about?
I don't know what the thinking is. I mean, I know, like here, it feels like these student protests have become this hugely political thing, right? Of like, do we clear people out? This was all discussed last year. Do we clear these students out or do we keep them? And eventually they were all cleared out.
Yeah.
And there seems to be this ongoing angst from the Trump administration about universities daring to allow this to keep going, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting that it's the students and the leaders of those that are being targeted as opposed to adults at the university who
or
are
the
like
guy from the Atlantic,
things.
like,
yeah,
what's to stop? I guess my question is, like, if they're willing to do this,
what's the limit?
Yeah, what?
Yeah, because optic-wise, piling students into these vans is not a great look, right? So it's like if they're prepared to do that, then they're prepared to do pretty much anything.
Yeah, that's what seems scary about all of this.
I guess largely the people being arrested aren't white, so there's that.
I think it was Rubio that was bragging that they had like kicked 300 students out at this point.
That was the brag, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the other side of things is that students are now being like booted out of these places they're paid to go to and their education is now completely in limbo. Better than being stuck in detention for God knows how long, being cut off from the outside world. But there is legal action being taken. And so I guess it's just a matter of how all that rolls out.
But there's also talks of them like dismantling the courts that are there to.
Yeah. And that's where my knowledge of this completely falls apart. And I feel like we should try and find an expert on this to talk on it because I find it very difficult to know how much this is going to keep crumbling or whether at some point there's going to be some course correction and the courts, it will be okay. That will remain. And these things will be played out. But I don't know what the risk factors are.
Yeah, well, because there was the Venezuelan thing as well, where they deported a bunch of people that they were saying were gang members, but a judge ordered for the plane to come back. And
I missed that one.
And the administration just ignored it.
Right.
And sent them anyways.
So yeah, you've got a court that is like utterly useless.
I think the court is trying, but I think
Trump is ignoring.
It's being ignored and the orders are being ignored. And I think the question will be, how strong are the court systems and the checks and balances? Or is it just going to be fully rogue and like we're at the mercy of whatever he wants to do.
And there's also the fact that even before all this, like courts, well, in any country, but I think particularly America, like they're backed up, like it's slow. And I feel all these things, there's so many cases that are happening. I just can't imagine how just even like backed up and logistically difficult it is to process all this stuff.
Which is maybe part of the strategy too, of like, we're going to move faster than the courts and they won't be able to keep up with us.
Well, it's like another version of like flooding the zone with shit, right? Just throw so much at this that they can't keep up. I feel like I've said this a few times, but it definitely sort of makes me think more about my place in this country and how, every time I apply for a visa, it's like a set of, it's like money and effort, and like America's not, there's certain things here, I pay taxes here now, but I'm still not allowed to vote because I'm only here on a 3-year visa. So it's like, this country doesn't make it easy to be a part of. Like, it's expensive, and I'm lucky that I can pay to get these visas to work here. But I guess what I'm saying is it gets less and less appealing to be like,
oh, well,
cool.
Yeah. So you need to find a nice American woman to,
or
man to,
my God, marry into this nightmare. All right. I tracked down this Canadian woman, Jasmine Mooney. She wrote an opinion piece in the Guardian newspaper, a UK newspaper, about a week ago now, about her experience being detained. I read that. I thought it was really compelling and honest. And I guess she was as close to me as I could see. She's like this, like she's privileged white person choosing to be in America and then suddenly finding themselves being in this like deeply unusual situation. And so her case differs completely to what we've just been talking about. She wasn't at the protests. It wasn't this case. She basically was a Canadian who had been working for this like water brand, which is a very American thing. The water brand, I think some of it had like hemp in it, etc. But she'd been back and forth on a visa for a while. Her visa had run out. She reapplied, but got denied because one of the letterheads wasn't on the bit of paper. And I've done this whenever I apply for an O1, I have to have reference letters. All those reference letters have to have letterhead. One of them was missing it. So she got denied. She went back to the border, I believe, in San Diego to apply entering the country. And that's when her problems began. I almost feel terrible bringing this up, but this is a podcast about American culture, and in New Zealand, American Pie was a huge part of everything. I can't ignore that. Come on.
Okay, I'm not joking. I was 19 years old when I was in that spinoff, and I literally don't even think that I made the actual movie. Like, I had the smallest part. I was like the party girl. I was so young and dumb back then when I filmed that. And I'm like, when I got out of jail, my friends were like, you are not going to believe this. And I'm like, no way are they bringing that up? And my friends are like, that movie's getting more publicity now than it did when it got launched.
That's so funny. Isn't that like such a interesting, like, look at the media and what they seize on, and everyone's looking to ground you in the story, and that's a reference point, but suddenly that aspect is like blowing so far bigger than it ever was.
So far, my CEO sent me this one headline. It was like, from Hollywood to handcuffs. I'm like, oh my God, that is diabolical. People are unhinged on the internet.
It's a great headline. It's a great fucking headline.
So ridiculous.
You grew up in Canada, and we've been meaning to do a Canadian episode for a while. So just quickly, you grew up in a place called Whitehorse, I believe? What was that like?
So it's actually a territory. So it's the furthest north in Canada. It's right beside Alaska. So I grew up there, and then I moved to Vancouver, BC, where I've been for the past, 17 years now.
Okay, and then you started working with this, an American brand, the Holy Water, right?
Yes, correct.
And
I moved to LA a year ago and was fully living in LA. I still had a place in Vancouver, so I'd go back and forth, but I was there for most of my time.
And so I'm here on an O1 visa, which lasts for sort of 3 years. What visa did you get to work and live in the United States?
I had a TN visa.
Okay, and what does that mean?
So a TN visa is a management consultant visa.
Okay. And everything was going relatively smoothly? You'd come in and out of America and things were pretty smooth?
Yeah, no issues at all until about 4 months ago.
Stay tuned for more Flightless Bird. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Flightless Bird is brought to you by Quince. Now, I recently went to two places. I went to Japan and I went to Mexico, and I had an amazing time. And both those countries needed vastly different clothing. And the key items to keep myself comfortable on the road were all from Quince. I took my puffer jacket and I took a series of tops and shorts for Mexico, and I had a great time. And it reminds me why I love Quince so much.
Yeah, I have a really nice cashmere sweater
It's
that
pretty.
I like from Quince.
They are also priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands, which is a massive saving. And by partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings directly on to you and me.
Another thing we like, Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices with premium fabrics and finishes.
And so for your next trip, treat yourself to the luxe upgrades you deserve from Quince. Go to quince.com/bird for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order.
That's QUINCE.com/bird to get free shipping and 365-day returns.
Quince.com/bird. Flightless Bird is brought to you by BetterHelp. Now, for me, and probably a lot of you listening, therapy can feel like a big investment. You think, oh gosh, what could I spend that money on?
Let's talk numbers. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, which adds up really fast. But with BetterHelp Online Therapy, you can save an average of 50% per session.
Yeah, with BetterHelp, you pay a flat fee for weekly sessions, saving you big on cost and on time. Therapy should feel accessible, not like a luxury. And with online therapy, you get quality care at a price that makes sense and can help you with anything from anxiety to just everyday stress. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the world is pretty stressful right now. I've found therapy very helpful when it comes to relating to other people, especially with conflict. As a New Zealander, I'm terribly bad at conflict. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah, you just send kind of snarky texts.
I send snarky texts, a lot of passive aggression, a lot of just not talking about it.
Yeah.
Therapy has been helpful in learning how to deal with that.
With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 5 million people globally. And it's convenient. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. Plus, switch therapists at any time.
Your well-being is worth it. Visit betterhelp.com/bird to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/bird. And I'm just wondering, that day where you got pulled aside, can you just take me through what that was like?
When I get there, the agent goes, "You're not eligible for this visa." And I go, "But I just had this visa. You gave it to me, and it's doing the exact same thing with the exact same paperwork. I don't understand." She calls the supervisor. "Oh, you're right. Actually, you are eligible for this visa." I'm like, okay, great. And then it was just one thing, back and forth, back and forth. They were literally processing my visa. And then something triggered them because my passport was about to expire in 2 years. And I was applying for a 3-year visa. And that triggered it. And then I was in there for hours, just sitting there. And it was back and forth, back and forth. And then finally, they go, "Okay, so come talk to us. Because you had a denial and then you had your visa voided, we actually can't process your visa here. You need to apply through the consulate." And I said, "I had no idea. No one has ever told me that. My lawyers didn't know that. I'll do that then." And she goes, "Okay, great. I just want you to know that you aren't in trouble. You didn't do anything wrong. You're not a criminal." And in my head, I'm like, why is she telling me this? This is so weird. Anyways, she's like, "But we need to send you back to Canada." And I go, "Okay, no problem. I was planning on going back anyway." So then I went and sat down, and I was literally looking at flights to go home. And this man comes out and he says, Jasmine, please come with me. And he takes me to this room, and literally with zero warning about what was going to happen, my stuff was taken from me, my phone ripped out of my hands against the wall. This woman starts patting me down. They're like barking orders, take off your shoes. They start ripping my shoelaces out of my shoes. And I'm like, whoa, like, what is going on? What is happening? And they're like, you're being detained and we are sending you back to Canada. And I'm like, okay, like, but what is what is going on?
Yeah.
And literally from that moment on, I had no idea what was going on, and no one would tell me what was going on. They threw me in a jail cell with about 5 other girls, like this tiny little cell. It was freezing cold, and I was detained in there for 48 hours. I slept on the cement floor on this tiny mat with aluminum foil over my body. Like, it looked like there was a bunch of dead bodies in there. And it wasn't until day 3 when I was allowed to make a phone call.
Right. So you had 3 days, you had no passport, no stuff, no phone. You are in one of those rare situations in life where you're completely cut off from the world.
Like, completely cut off. And I'm telling you, those first days were the worst days, because you're literally just laying there and with no answers. And anytime a guard would come in because they would give you food, I was just, what is going on? And they're like, we're just doing our job. We don't know.
What was your headspace like then? Were you like crying and upset? Were you angry? Were you completely placid? Like, what state were you in?
Honestly, I think I was in such shock that I just tried to sleep and make the time go by faster. Like, I literally just laid on the ground with this thing over my body for 2 days. So on about day 3, after being in the first jail, I was woken up in the middle of the night and they said, you're leaving. And I go, I'm going home. I get to go home. And they're like, I don't know where you're going. And I'm like, okay, great. And then I went downstairs and there was like 10 other girls down there and everyone was crying, but like not happy tears. And I was like, what's going on? And they're like, we're being transferred. And transferred is literally the worst experience in the jail system. So what that means is you're being transferred to another jail, but the process of that, it took 24 hours, and I am not exaggerating. We got woken up at 2 a.m. and we didn't go to sleep until 3 a.m. And we were up that entire time. So they have to take all of you out. They have to process all of you out of that current jail. Then they put us literally in chains. They wrap chains around your stomach. They handcuff you, strap you to your stomach, handcuffs on your feet. They put us all in this prison van. There was about 60 of us because they brought men with us, and drove us to Arizona. So that drive was probably around 5 hours. And then when you get to the other jail, they have to process every single one of you. You have to do everything again, the fingerprints, the interviews, the medical, and they keep you in holding, which are these ice boxes, these freezing cold ice boxes. And you're in there, there's no blankets, there's no food, there's no water. And then you get placed into this other prison and you're like, and it's completely different. I was in a jail cell with 30 girls. So we shared a jail cell together, 30 of us. And in that prison, you have to start the entire process over of getting your phone set up, of getting in contact with people. Like, everything is just like you're starting from scratch. And this jail, this jail made the other one look like the Four Seasons. Like, it was insane. And so then I really started panicking. The morale was at an all-time low. Women were losing their minds. I wasn't allowed a phone call in this prison because we got one free call, but it had to be an American number. And the only number I had was Canadian.
And where's your headspace at right now? Because sure, they've said you've been banned from having a visa. You can't come back to America. But what are you thinking about the fact you're still detained? Like, that feels very bad.
It's so hard to even explain what it feels like, because you are just in total shock. Like, everything just felt like a movie. Nothing felt real. Like, it was almost like I wasn't even in my body and I was just going with the motions. And one of them, actually, I forgot to mention this, one of the most messed up things that happened to me, this is when I really started panicking, was when I was being interviewed to get placed into prison. I was begging everyone for information. And this man, like one of the officers, goes, listen, I don't know your case. You could be here for days, you could be here for weeks, but you need to mentally prepare yourself right now to be here for months. And then when I did start meeting the other women, I was like, holy shit, Jasmine, you are not allowed to complain about anything, because every single woman in there had it a trillion times worse than me. So these were teachers, these were nurses, these were caregivers, like, you name it, right? So they were all so incredibly lovely, mothers, and just everyone came together and supported each other. There was a pastor in there that gave the most beautiful services. And it just like, that is what really changed for me. And that's truly what got me through it. And just made me so incredibly grateful for my situation and my life. And I was in there for 2 weeks. Like, these women had been in there for weeks to months. There was one girl in there who had been there for 10 months.
Because there is this thing, and it's really interesting, where two white people talking about what it's like when ICE gets you and detains you. And I think in a way it's kind of what's so interesting at the moment is this time in America where I feel like people like us, well, certainly you, I can't talk, I'm on the outside of all this, but people in our position are sort of for the first time maybe going, holy shit, we're in America and there's a chance that this can happen to us. When of course this has been happening to people that aren't in our privileged position for a long time. But I mean, what's so interesting about you is you're this person that we don't normally see in these sort of circumstances. And I feel like that suddenly has people thinking about America in a completely different way. Do you know what I mean?
100%, because like I said in my essay, to put things in perspective, I'm Canadian. I have a Canadian passport. I'm white. I have resources. I had lawyers. I had politicians. I had media. And it still took me 2 weeks to get out of there. Can you even possibly imagine what everyone else is going through? So now I'm like, what am I going to do? Thank God there was this weird tablet thing attached to the wall that we figured out. And then we were able to send emails through that. So remember emails, because the only email I knew was my CEO's. Obviously, I know my coworkers' emails. So I emailed my CEO. I'm like, BJ, you need to get in contact with Britt, who was like dealing with my lawyers and trying to get me out of there. And I was like, Britt, this place is insane. Like, I cannot stay here. And so what I said, I'm like, you need to contact the media. Like, people need to know that this is happening. I've never seen anything like this. Yeah. So what happened is one of the girls ended up giving me her phone call. We were like all in this together. So she gave me her phone call, and Britt set me up with this amazing reporter, and I was able to do an interview in prison, like in my jail cell. And then as soon as my story got released, ICE out of nowhere called my lawyers, and they were like, Jasmine, yeah, she's in here. Oh, weird. We weren't aware that she would pay for her flight home. I'm like, that's bullshit. I literally said from day one, I told every officer, even if they subpoenaed ICE, I had even wrote in this tablet thing requesting to the officer, being like, I will pay for a flight. I will charter a plane. Like, get me out of here. Literally, get me out of here. And then I was released the next day. Literally, I'm not joking. Every single woman in there was like doing everything they could to help me get out, because they were like, you are our only hope and you are our voice. All the women started writing letters to their families because they weren't able to contact them and they were freaking out. So everyone was working, like, we were all in this together. And that's why I'm so vocal about this experience, because I literally promised every single one of them that I'm going to do everything I can to use my voice and help change this situation. My story is getting out of there, and it's also giving people courage to tell their experiences too, because it's scary, right? A lot of people, one, are just in complete shambles coming out of there. They don't want to relive and talk about it. Or a lot of women are scared to talk about it because they think they're going to get banned for the rest of their life. There's just so many layers to this, where we are programmed to live in fear, and that is their tactic.
So yeah, her story was kind of wild because I just reminded me of kind of my experience of like you get your visa application together and you hope it goes well. Her process was different to mine. I always go to the American Embassy in New Zealand. She did a thing which I didn't even understand you could do, which was she basically entered America and applied in the space. And that's something I've never done before. And so when I'm applying in New Zealand, they're not going to seize me in New Zealand. But the fact she was in America applying, that's where things got super curly for her.
Well, so what was the justification on their end? Did she get that?
She's figuring that out. No, she's figuring it out now. She has no idea why it happened.
Wasn't some tweets about this?
I mean, the one thing, like, she struck me as like being like quite non-political. Like she didn't dive into that Zoom being like down with the administration. She was just like, it's crazy this happened to me as someone who was just trying to work in America. And her theory is that either the system flagged her in some weird way because she'd been denied one other time because of the letterhead thing, or because maybe the product she was working with had like hemp in the water, but I don't really see that as being a thing. I guess there's a bunch of headlines being written about her particular case, and the main thing is that she's being used as an example by ICE. An example of what? I'm not sure. Just being like terrified of like coming in here and being a foreigner working. I don't know. I think what Hayden said at the beginning of this episode was right. It's like, David, you found a way to make this episode about you. And like, I'm not, that's true. And it's like, I talk to her because I see her as being like a version of sort of me in a way, of being like this person that has everything in their favor and they still got messed with, which I find kind of fascinating.
I think that's kind of what it's going to take for people to kind of understand what's going on. Once they see someone that looks like them, that this is happening
that's the sad thing, completely. And I think that's a bigger part of the story as well, of like the reason people generally don't care about this stuff is because the people that aren't caring aren't white and it's not happening to them.
Yeah, they feel disconnected and they're not afraid that, hey, this could happen to me.
Yeah. I think it's that ultimate idea, and it bleeds into so many parts of this country, including, I think, healthcare. It's like they must have done something to deserve that happening to them. That bad thing could possibly never happen to me because, like, I haven't done anything bad.
Right.
So, yeah, that was kind of wild. There are a few other examples of people just randomly being deported. There was, that University of Washington lab tech. She was a green card holder. She was detained by Immigration and Customs. I'm just going to read a bit from this article from NBC News. Miss Dixon, 64, who had legal permanent status in the United States for 50 years, was arrested at an airport in Seattle and placed into ICE custody after coming back from a trip to her native Philippines in Feb. She has a hearing scheduled for July, which is a wee while away.
Yeah. So this is mostly international travel. It's
International
people just
travel.
getting like picked up from the system.
Yeah, you're
and
leaving and you're
flagged.
coming back in. And she had a conviction to do with embezzlement a very, very, very long time ago. And that's the theory of like, for some reason now that's being used as the example. She's been here for 50 years.
Yeah.
And there was this headline jumped out at me. It's a great headline. He voted for Trump. Now his wife sits in an ICE detention center. Bradley Bartelli and Camila Munoz had a familiar small-town love story before they collided with immigration politics. They met through mutual friends, had a first date at the local steakhouse, very American. Married for 12 years. They've got kids. Last month, on their way home to Wisconsin after honeymooning in Puerto Rico, an immigration agent pulled her aside at the airport. "Are you an American citizen?" said the agent. She answered no, she wasn't. She's from Peru, but she and her husband had taken legal steps so that she might one day get citizenship. And from there, she disappeared.
There's so many of these stories specifically circling now.
Yeah, things that have happened that haven't been getting airtime, and now suddenly here they are.
And there's also a lot of these stories of like, I voted for him and now he's turned his back on me. I saw a few of like Mexican Americans that voted for him and then they were pulled over and they are here legally and just like harassed for whether they're allowed to be here.
Yeah,
and
pulled over for bogus reasons and then torn into to find a way to get them out of here. Yeah, it's a surreal thing where I think Trump didn't just appeal to a bunch of like white voters, like appealed to like a bunch of different bases that are now finding maybe things aren't in their favor.
Yeah.
And what's sort of worse having your partner torn away than like you, because like they suddenly go into a void where you can do nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what struck me about Jasmine's story is that when we were shooting Dark Tourist, we were in Northern Cyprus and we were filming something we weren't meant to film. And we were on a rooftop. Knowingly. Yeah. So they told us earlier in the day, like, don't film. And we kept filming. We're on a rooftop and the door burst open and we were detained by the police. And it's the only time in my life when I've been in a different country and I've been in a cell and my passport's been taken off me. And I just remember that feeling of being like, oh no, it's like, this is completely out of my control. It feels different to being in a foreign country, no passport and no cell, and feels bad.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what a lot of people are dealing with. I mean, imagine also the language barrier, throwing that in there. She said that, I don't know if this was just in the article or in that, but that most of the women that she was with in that first cell didn't speak English.
I didn't know, not a word of English.
So just like being confused and put in this area and then having to just trust that the system is going to look out for them.
You don't exactly have all that much confidence when the system's the one that's just like throwing you in with. Yeah. And she said this, and the other women in there are in the same position where you're not given like an induction guide.
Yeah.
It's not like, she was talking about how they're all trying to figure out like how the hell to make contact, and they found like a tablet and they could find ways to get access to email, but then like using that was like incredibly difficult. And then it's also like, who are you emailing? It's the one tablet between like 300 people in that space. Yeah. It's very odd. There's a number of articles now being sort of written, and certainly a lot of it's been discussed on social media, where if you are coming into America, just how important it is to even just delete the social media apps on your phone, so that if an immigration officer says, give us your phone and pull up your Twitter, it's like you don't have Twitter there. Like you might still have an account, but just keep that stuff kind of hidden. And that's the way people are talking now, is like, if you're coming into America, make sure you don't have the shit on your phone so they can't check what you've been saying.
This is the stuff that like you hear about what it's like in Russia.
No, completely. And like back when we were doing that Dark Tourist show, when we were talking about going into these other countries like Turkmenistan, we were having these discussions. Like, we take all the social media apps off your phone, because if we're ever detained, we don't want anyone going through like what anyone in our team has been saying about anything.
Yeah.
And to be thinking of America in that way now is just fucking wild to me.
Well, especially because of what it's meant to represent.
Freedom. Like land of the free is like your main thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets super weird. I'll put in the show notes, I'll put some of these articles, kind of like tips for traveling into the United States, which sort of feels like you're traveling into North Korea or something. So I don't know. We'll see what happens from here on out.
Yeah. Well, we recorded next week's episode, so
we've got next week's in the can,
and then
if you're solo the week after that, then we know what's happened. And if I have to do the show from back in New Zealand, it'll be a format change.
Yeah,
I'll be coming in from that screen.
Yeah.
I'll just be bringing like purely New Zealand stories to you
in a bird costume,
of course, in a bird costume. But yeah, weird times,
scary times, and scarier. I mean, I feel privileged because I'm a citizen and I'm white and I've been here my whole life. But yeah, for so many people here, it seems like a very scary time.
It feels a bit as well as when we did the episode on the fires. It's like we're scared, but then also being aware that there are people that are right next to the fire that are in a whole other world of hell that we're not even...
Rightfully more scared.
Yeah, rightfully more scared. And I think it's always important to remember that relativity to this whole thing.
Well, and there's just this like bleak hopelessness that comes with it of like, what can we even do? And our small attempt is
to talk about it.
Let's talk about it on the show this week.
Yeah, 100%. The final thing that jumped out at me from talking to Jasmine is that she the whole way had been like, I just send me back to Canada.
Yeah.
I will pay to go back to Canada. Instead, like that was just, she was shut down immediately and just, locked up for 2 weeks. And that's just a very, again, I just imagine coming in through the border and sort of being like, just send me back to New Zealand. They're like, no, you're in America now and you are not leaving and you're going to be in isolation for God knows how long. It's a weird way to think about the country. As always, if you have any of your own experiences in this, by all means, email in flightlessbirdchat@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you. Do you want to hear a bit of feedback?
Yeah, let's do some feedback.
Kristen wrote in, we mentioned Vegemite in a recent episode, one of my favorite spreads on toast.
The black sludge, you called it, I think?
The black sludge.
Yeah.
Kristen said, love the show. Been listening since you started. As an Australian, I feel the need to let Rob know that David did a terrible job of explaining Vegemite.
This seems like pretty consistent feedback. But
yeah, I mean, I'm being honest. I'm keeping myself honest. Basically, a lot of the feedback is David doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about.
He's misrepresented us.
He's like misrepresented us completely. Rob kept wanting to know if it was like Nutella or peanut butter, and David kept saying no. But really, it is. I violently disagree with that statement, but she explains it a bit more. It's a spread for toast and sandwiches like Nutella and peanut butter. Yeah, so it's like a spread. We knew that. Only it's umami flavor, very savory and very salty. And I think that's the thing I couldn't.
Oh, I'm much more sold on that description of it, though, than yours.
Yeah, I think I sort of insulted the whole concept of it.
Well, you also started with describing it in a very terrible way.
I always like to undersell.
You were like a rotting dog vomited.
I like to undersell. It's like if I go on a date, I have a big theory about always going in messier than I'd normally
like
be.
A fumbling idiot.
Yeah, because then it can only get better. I'll never understand people that go in like trying to be a better version of themselves because you're going to just fail later.
You weren't trying to sell me Vegemite. You were explaining to me what it was, though.
I was trying to sell it.
Like I want in a jar that you were like, I want you to taste this now.
I'll bring in a jar. We use it sparingly with lots of butter and maybe with cheese on a sandwich. Now this has blew my mind. Sure if this is true. Might just be in Australia. Babies get it slathered on their teething rusks. I was an extremely fussy kid and my mum packed me Vegemite sandwiches to take for Christmas lunch at a restaurant when I was 5. I'm just going to rewind here and say, what is a teething rusk?
Probably like a teething ring. So when babies' teeth are growing in,
they
get little teething rings to chew on because it helps the gums.
So apparently in Australia, you put Vegemite on those.
Well, it probably encourages them to chew on it if there's something.
Babies love Vegemite. There you go. There was a lot of debate about windows in airport toilets.
Yeah, people didn't know what you were talking about.
So this is some backstory on this. Went in a blimp. Mm-hmm. They had a window in the blimp. We talked about that for a very long time. Someone wrote in from an airline saying, I had the stats. And if you're a man urinating in a plain toilet and there is a window there, 50% of people will wee, 50% won't. I then said, I proudly wee with a window and an airplane toilet. A lot of controversy and a lot of confusion. And this is fascinating to me because most airplane toilets don't have windows.
Yeah, I've never experienced
which
one.
is what you said to me.
Yeah.
And I said very clearly, there's always a window there. So then people started saying, well, have I lost the plot? They're saying, someone wrote in saying, I think what Dave is thinking about is the window
Next
in the
to
bulkhead
it.
next
Yeah,
to
yeah.
the bathroom.
That's where you load in, essentially.
Where you load in.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about this and I was like, no, I have been. And then someone else wrote in saying, David, you have given a dead giveaway of your entire lifestyle because those windows are only on like first class toilets.
You were in a private jet,
Under some sort of
David.
private jet situation. And I thought about this and I thought they're probably right in that so I've flown business class a couple of times in my life. I generally do economy because it's too expensive otherwise.
Yeah.
Wherever I am, I creep forward to use those front bathrooms because they're so much cleaner. So I wait till people are sleeping and then I put on like an air of superiority.
Yeah, it's kind of your move is just to fumble around. I mean, it's like going on a first date. You fumble around and act like you don't know what you're doing. And
What's going on?
How you...
I fumble my way to the front of the plane and I try to always use those toilets. And also there are snacks up there and I load my pockets with all those snacks they put out and I take them back to my seat. So I think, to be clear, I think those windows in airplane bathrooms are just in like the fancy bathrooms. And I would say to anyone listening, just go and use them. Like, what are they going to do? The worst thing they're going to do is tell you off. Of course, be polite. Don't be belligerent.
Did you just listen to this episode? Worst thing they're going to do is you're going to land in America and they're going to detain you.
Detain you forever. Be careful when you do this. I suggest when everyone's sleeping, when the other passengers are sleeping, and also the flight attendants, there's a time during the flight when they are also sleeping, mostly.
So like tiptoe. And maybe put your hood up.
Sneak. No hood up.
Bad advice.
No
David.
hood up. But just be discreet because then you can do what I have done and you can urinate or whatever you want to do in there with the window on a long haul flight. Highly recommended. It's a great thing to do. Christy also wrote in with a very good question. How exactly did Dan, that guy, know the statistics on how many men were able to wee while the window shade was open? Very good question. And now I have many questions for Dan about how he came up with that stat. One thing when you hear a stat, I feel like you should always think, how do they arrive at that?
I think he was a flight attendant and he asked every male passenger that came on.
Normal.
Plane.
Did you
can you pee or not with
get
this
your
window?
dick out with the window open or closed? The window shade open or closed? Will wrote in, who was the one that gave us a tip off that Bob Barker was providing prison wear to prisoners, as in Bob Barker, the famous host. He said, I would like to apologize for providing that false information. A simple Google search would have cleared this up. I've lived 12 years of my life just thinking that the Price is Right guy made my jail flip-flops and never thought twice about it. Now I know. Thanks again. Okay. Seventh Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
In, I believe, the Quiverful episode, I brought up Seventh Heaven. We've done a crazy thing on the show recently where we do a topic and then we randomly like choose when that will air. And then whenever it airs, it suddenly becomes amazingly newsworthy.
Yeah. Kanye episode happened. We recorded days before that happened and then released it after it happened.
There was another one that we did that was like also like very crazily timed. Anyway, we did it again. We mentioned Seventh Heaven. The day after our episode came out, a new documentary came out called Hollywood Demons, America's Dad. Not a greatly well-made documentary, but kind of fascinating.
What a review.
And essentially, Stephen Collins, who was the pastor dad in that show, there's a documentary basically coming out about how he's a pedophile. And it's now come out that I always laugh when awful things happen. I don't mean to do that. The latest headline about the former star of Seventh Heaven, disgraced actor living with a superman who is 40 years younger. Not great.
Is he free?
He is free. So 2014 is when all this stuff originally came out.
Mhm. 2014?
2014.
It's been 11 years.
It's been 11 years. Essentially what happened at the beginning of the doc, and I need to finish watching it, is audio was leaked of him and his wife in counseling where he's basically saying to his therapist, I have all these feelings towards underage girls. And his partner leaked it at the time. And that's how the rest of the world found out about it. He's basically a massive creep. He was meant to be in the show on air. He was like this all-American dad.
Yeah.
And the whole like narrative around him as an actor is that he was just like the nicest guy. Everyone loved working with him. But he was a awful person.
How old is he now?
He's like 70.
And his partner's 30?
Yeah. I mean, that can get into a whole discussion of age gaps, I suppose. But it's just the optics of his past and the way he kind of rolls. Not so great.
No.
But yeah, in the documentary, he basically just kept getting his dick out in front of a 13-year-old. So to be clear, he's a awful human.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how he's not in prison.
Oh, this is actually, I want to know this now, because did he serve, like, what happened to him?
Yeah, or did he serve his time? Is this spaceman Barry too?
Oh my God. I mean, I feel like we do need to do a Seventh Heaven episode because there's other stuff that's come out about that as well.
There's also a Barry on the show, the oldest brother.
Okay, so October 7th, 2014, the New York Police Department investigated Collins after an audio tape leaked to the media revealed a male voice admitting to past sexual abuse of a minor. So that was that therapy tape.
Oh, and it wasn't even desires. It was admitting to a past
Admitted to a past sexual abuse of a minor. An LA Police Department spokesperson stated that Collins had been investigated by the department in 2012 after receiving a claim from 18 years earlier in regards to sexual abuse. The LAPD stated that its investigation did not allow it to substantiate the allegations. So nothing happened. It was an investigation. He never went away. And then in 2014, he did an interview with People magazine, and he admitted to inappropriate sexual contact with 3 female minors in 73, 82, and 94.
Right.
So look, interesting. He admitted to that. So you would think, again, surely consequences, but it appears he has never had any consequences except for his reputational failure and embarrassment and shame and all the rest of it. America. Lexi wrote in also to say, I just wanted to validate you, David. When you guessed that Aaron Carter was on Seventh Heaven, you weren't wrong. He wasn't on the regular cast. He was on a few episodes as a guest star. So I wasn't going crazy when I said Aaron Carter. Morris wrote in about the Quiverful episode, about Christians having extraordinarily large families. She said, I enjoyed your discussion about the reason large families are more prevalent in rural areas. Although I agree that rural areas are more religious, I don't think it's the primary reason for large families. Most rural areas are made up of farms, and at least in interior Canada, where I'm from, the children are the main labor force. I was raised in a family of 7 kids. We weren't religious. I'm positive my parents did not follow the Quiverful movement, and I'm not saying that the only reason they had 7 children was for a free workforce, but we did start helping out on the farm young. But when we turned 14 years old, my parents started paying us a salary. And so essentially, little mini workforce for farms.
That makes sense too.
Carmen said, listening to the Quiverful episode, I found myself wanting to yell out loudly, what about the woman, when you guys were musing about the decline of the large families? Women's liberation, the right to choose our own careers and livelihoods, make our own income, be totally independent, puts a big damper on spending 20 years as a baby maker.
Yeah, we did fully miss the layer of misogyny that
is built
was
in.
Happening there. Of like the woman's place in this movement was
you were here
just to have kids and reproduce and raise these kids and not have their own independence and autonomy and
their own interests and job and life. It's like which if you want to do that, that's fine. But within that Quiverful movement was this idea that this is your God ordained role, is to breed. So I thought that was a really good point that Carmen made. Cara wrote in as well about Seventh Heaven. Ashley Simpson was also in several seasons, playing the girlfriend of one of the sons. I vaguely remember there being some drama around her character and having premarital sex. We should do a Seventh Heaven
Yeah, it seems
episode.
like we should.
There's also a TikTok account that has been recently replaying like problematic clips.
Yeah. You sent me one of them.
Wild. Like a French
The
exchange student
and
comes.
the like 7-year-old being very racist.
The 7-year-old basically and the family is basically like hates the fact that they're a foreigner and goes to like get them deported.
They get his cigarettes and
Yeah. It's wild. And yeah, the politics on that show is insane.
maybe what we need to do is have like a Thursday episode of this show for the next 2 years. That's just a Seventh Heaven rewatch where we rewatch every episode of that show.
It's deranged, but it's actually not that crazy because I feel every episode would raise a very specific point about American culture and it would be deranged. Let's think about this.
Yeah, maybe we'll consolidate it into a 10-episode series.
A lot of people wrote in about the Duggar family who were also just involved in the very crazy 80s, 90s Christian origins of the United States. Maybe we'll do a separate Duggars at some point. So thanks for everyone that wrote in about that. Someone wants us to do a Mormon episode. I think that's a great idea. We mentioned in the Focus on the Family episode Plugged In, which was that Christian organization's website where they'd review films. A few people wrote in, and I love this. Kyle said, as horny teenagers with zero access to porn, we found ourselves relying on Plugged In reviews to get descriptions. Sex was treated as an entirely forbidden topic, so any mention of it, no matter how disapproving, was still more information than we'd get anywhere else.
That was their sex ed.
Yeah, so that was like a good Christian site they could go to, but they basically would read to like get horny. We even had our favorite reviewers because some were way more detailed than the others.
Barbara talking about the sex scene.
Kind of amazing. And Nicole like also wrote in. So we had a couple of guys wrote in and Nicole wrote in saying, as a horny preteen in the 2010s, I would use sites like this as an alternative to pornography. I use Common Sense Media or the parental guidance section on a movie's IMDb page to read the graphic descriptions of the sex and nudity in movies. And it felt like my dirty little secret. If a movie sounded really naughty, I might even find it on a movie pirating site to watch it. So I love the idea that these sites were trying to warn parents.
A gateway.
We're a gateway drug to horny teenagers. It's really, really good. A lot of feedback about asphalt, which I also apparently say incorrectly.
I don't think there's an age. I think it's just asphalt.
Yeah. In New Zealand, I think we maybe say asphalt, or it's just me.
To make you feel better, I did get a comment about how I said crayons, crayon.
Yeah.
Crayon. I don't know if it's a Midwest thing, but
you miss out the Y. So you make it once. So you say crayon.
Crayon.
Yeah. So
crayon.
you're saying crayon, but
I
you
feel
just
like you now.
You skip it over and you said cron.
Crayon.
I love it so much. Gerardo wrote in about asphalt, and he said, on the last podcast episode, y'all were questioning asphalt being used in Texas. I can in fact say that yes, asphalt is used throughout Texas. I live close to the DFW area.
That's Dallas-Fort Worth.
Dallas-Fort Worth area. And have been all around the state and have seen many areas use asphalt. I even have some at the end of my driveway where it meets the street. So yeah, correct.
Yep.
We had about 50 people write in about asphalt, very passionately, which I
pro
really
asphalt
like.
or
Very pro.
Good.
Yeah, big into it.
Yeah.
David wrote in to correct me. During the blimp episode, I was very critical of helicopters and the idea that if it stops rotating, you crater to the ground. He wrote in that helicopters have a thing called auto rotation, where it will freely rotate if the motor breaks. And so if the engine fails on a helicopter, you don't just drop like a rock.
Oh, the momentum will keep going.
Yeah, it'll keep
until
going,
it stops.
and it's not as diabolical as I just hate the idea of spreading bullshit on this show.
They should get like the hand
Oh, you just start cranking. It's really fast.
Yeah.
And maybe we should end there with the safety of helicopters. If you've got any feedback, flightlessbirdchat@gmail.com.
And don't forget, April 13th, we're going to be in Portland. And April 18th, we're going to be in San Francisco. So
I'm really excited how these shows are coming together.
Yeah,
It's
they're
like, I
fun.
feel like they're very daunting when we first think about them. It's like, we have to put on a show and it has to be good.
and then as it gets closer, when
Yeah,
it
it's
starts
like, it's fun.
morphing into something.
Yeah, like
agree.
I get excited about the idea of like sharing the show.
Yes.
And that is a really good feeling. It goes from like fear to excitement.
Well, I think it goes from there's a lot to figure out and a lot to do.
Yeah.
And we both want to make sure that the show is special to each
Yeah.
city too.
Yeah.
But we have some fun stuff planned for both of these.
Yeah, we do. And it's I think we're both we want to put effort in. I think we're both of us are so against the idea of it just being like two people on stage talking with nothing else.
Just coasting through it.
Yeah. And we so it's from our own like wanting to make this thing like something we would enjoy. So I'm excited. So your tickets are on at flightlessbirdpod.com. See you soon. Thanks for listening. And remember to share this episode or any episode you like of the show with your friends and family or enemies. Okay, bye.
Bye.